What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Opinionated Off Topic. Today I'm with Carlos Mojica, co-owner, co-founder of Opinionated Media. I'm Cam. Today we're with Charlotte Warren, host of the
Peasant Party Podcast is what we're calling
Peasant Party Podcast.
Yeah, host of the Peasant Party Podcast. Super excited to have her on. She actually followed us, and I liked her content, and I also saw she was at Pouch 6. So shout out to the Pouch 6 people over there, Jake and Ryan. It's cool to see like the little community, everyone kind of knowing each other and like working together. But it's gonna be a cool podcast. We're gonna interview her for a little bit, and then we're gonna get into more of a discussion, kind of collaborative episode, and go from there. So I'm actually really excited for this one. So, yeah.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I almost botched that one. You came from far away. For me, I don't really drive much, so anywhere's
South
far.
Manchac, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's far. So yeah, and especially traffic. Was it traffic bad?
It wasn't too bad at this time.
Yeah. But again, thank you for taking time out your day. Just give a little backstory. Where you're from, what you're doing now, how you got there.
Who am I? I guess, where should I start? Charlotte, I guess, 30, just turned 30 a few weeks ago, so that was fun. Big 3-0. But yeah, I guess to kind of talk, I guess I'll start with the content creation journey. Probably about a year or so ago. And I downloaded TikTok at the beginning of the pandemic, the way a lot of people did. And I think I fiddled around with it. My career or day job is in digital marketing. So it was like TikTok is this new big thing, fiddled around with it, followed certain accounts. Always kind of thought dating content was interesting to follow. Like I always liked when like a bad date story would like pop up on my For You page. So I would follow those types of accounts. And then of course, just being, in Austin and just hearing all the crazy stories my friends had. And then I think it was almost a little over a year ago today, was at a brunch conversation with a few like close girlfriends, and referenced back like an old story of one of my friends, like it's a guy that, in my opinion, that she dated. She'd been going on dates with him for the course of like a month and a half, brought him her date to the company holiday party. I referenced him in a story I was telling the group, like, oh yeah, Phil, the guy you dated. And she stops me mid-sentence to correct me and says, like, we never dated. We were only talking. We were not in a relationship. We were talking. And it starts this whole debate of what does dating mean? Like, when to me, it was like, oh, you're actively going on dates with somebody. That doesn't have to mean in a relationship. And she was saying, no, like dating means you're in a relationship. It's a talking stage. And then she ended it by saying, agree to disagree. I don't take that well. I'm very stubborn. So I went home and like drew up a little diagram of like, this is when the talking stage is. It's that like window of time before that first date takes place. And once you're going on dates, you're dating. Dating isn't a scary word. And then I figured I would just post a video on TikTok to prove her wrong, and it went viral. Some like Instagram influencer reposted or stitched it, and then a lot of followers came in overnight. And I was like, this is kind of interesting. This is kind of fun. And I was like, maybe there's something I could do here. Just having a career in marketing, I kind of always wanted to dabble in like making videos and like having fun with it. And then I think a week later had like a friend that was talking about a situation where she'd been ghosted, and was like listening to her story. And then I realized like she's talking about a dating app match that just stopped talking to her. And I was like, that's not ghosting. Like ghosting, like you have to like know they exist and like see them in person and actually have like some form of a relationship with them for them to be a ghost. So then it was like, I could make a little diagram of what is or isn't ghosting. So I made like this XY axis of like, what's the threshold of ghosting? I was trying to do it in a notebook like I did with the first little diagram that I put on TikTok. It was too complicated. I'm like, what should I do? I'm like, I have PowerPoint and I have all of these like graphics or templates that I would use for work. And I was like, oh, maybe like I'll kind of use something like that. So I put it on a PowerPoint where it was just easier to draw. It was easier to read. And then I made a video of like, this is like the threshold of what is or isn't ghosting. That one went viral, more followers. And then I was like, I think maybe we've got a niche on our hands. And then it's kind of like dating content that was kind of outside the norm, where it was like, oh, we're going to use funny visual aids. Like I also just would constantly see different dating content pieces pop up, whether it was, more female oriented, where it was these like rich New York influencers with this snooty advice, or it would be all the ones that are in Miami that are targeting men, where it's like a lot of people screaming with gusto into a mic. And I was like, let's do something different. Let's do something fun, kind of, hang out in the middle and, kind of have fun with all of this. Because the dating side of TikTok is kind of crazy. And so continued to make videos, would take, based on like audience demand, people would say like, oh, cover this topic, or something would come up, that was really popular on TikTok, like a viral video or story or something like that. And just continued to make dating content using goofy PowerPoints and visual aids. I don't take myself too seriously with it. I like to stay gender neutral. I would say most of my audience is kind of that like mid-20s and up, just in a sense where I always just feel like college dating, like you don't need to go on real dates, like save your money, go to the park, go to college parties. But it's a really fun audience of just really sweet people who just don't want the volatile, like hot take dating content. So that's kind of where all that came from. And then, discovered Pouch 6, and I wanted to do longer form content. I feel like I always like push the 3-minute mark a lot. And, I'm always like just shouting until the end. It was like, let's do something longer form. Let's like draw at these discussions and have them in a nuanced, fun way. I also like to do it on a personal level. Like it helps my public speaking skills. It's brought some fun opportunities. So I've continued on with it. I've really, really enjoyed it. And then, as far as the Peasant name, like everyone's kind of curious about that. It was just the name of the account when I like started making content. I wanted to like distance myself from my real name just because TikTok has a way of like popping up on people's feeds. Usually it's like Charlotte something. But it was like, I don't want this to get back to my work. And I had an ex-boyfriend like way back in the day who would like unironically call people peasants because like they were being cheap, and he liked to just like spend money he didn't have on stupid stuff. And he would like, I would be looking for a coupon. He'd be like, oh, you're at your little peasant party over there. So it kind of became the username. But I think it kind of fits in a sense that a lot of dating content is like about superficial stuff, like who has the most money, who looks the prettiest. And it's like, the modern day peasant is kind of like the average Joe and Jill, which is who I'm all about. So that's kind of a whole scope of my content journey and what it's about. Dating side of TikTok and just in general on the internet is a very interesting place. There's people from all walks of life, and they've all got a lot of strong opinions.
So you just started
basically
a year ago. How has just learning content creation been for you?
Challenging. It's harder than it looks. Like I think there's definitely times where it would be like, look at all these influencers and podcasters, and I was like, this is harder than it looks. I mean, it's tough. And definitely I have a lot of respect for everyone and every side of kind of this industry, just being innovative, doing it on their own, like coming up with cool setups like in their house and having really cool, really big ideas, trying to do something different because you can't really just do the same thing everyone else is doing. So it's been a lot of fun, and just the diversity of people I've gotten to meet has been great too. What
have been some of the struggles you've had doing it, or just learning it?
I think learning it, I think. Like editing, I think is a pain in the butt. And then having enough space on my computer, like running out of space on Google Drive, file sizes, finding, I feel like there's so many tools out there that are so useful that I don't even know about. And it's like, what don't I know about? So that, and then just like little things like copyright stuff, words you can or can't say, from a technical standpoint. It's definitely challenging. That's why it's like Pouch 6 is so helpful because they do a lot of it for you. But I would say that's the most challenging. And then kind of beyond that, I think just the craziness of the internet is a lot of fun too.
Did you have any like struggles making videos, like TikTok videos? Like, did you ever feel like you had to put out a video, or like, I can't think of a video to put out and I need to put one out?
Yes. Well, I think it would always just be, I always wanted to do something, and even it was just a good way to challenge myself as well. Just, come up with something, be creative, like figure something out. ChatGPT has been kind of fun in a way. It's like today I said, like make up some funny dating buzzwords, and I don't follow it to a T, but sometimes they'll give like that'll give good ideas of if I need anything. I can also just pull up whatever craziness some boomer at the New York Times has written about modern dating today, where they're like, here's a new dating trend, like it's called cyber flashing or something. It's like, nobody talks like that, but okay. So there's always something to go off, because I think, until the end of time, people are going to be looking for relationships and trying to date. And I think there's always like a new issue that pops up with, whatever modern technology or issues are going on. So there's always something.
Yeah. Does your job does that like help you with content creation? I don't know what is involved in digital marketing.
Yeah, so I do. I say it's boring in a sense, where it's just like, how much money are we? How much, all the pretty pictures we're putting out in the world. How much money is it bringing back in? I work in like SaaS. I like to keep it very separate in a sense that I think like my personality is a little overwhelming. And I like to keep it separate from my corporate personality for sure.
I definitely feel that, because when you interview people, talk all the time on camera, and then you go to your job, it's like it's a completely different switch. Like, and keeping it separate, I feel like also keeps your ideas and everything sane for like what you're talking about and discussing. I guess going from the content creation and then getting into the dating side of talking. Are you in a? I'm pretty sure you're in a relationship, but I'm just asking for the audience.
Yeah.
But I guess with like the dating content and then like being in a relationship, is it hard to discuss like dating and like dating topics while you're already in at least for like the talking phase and like the casually dating phase for people? Is that like hard to discuss just because you're not in that phase of your own life?
I feel like I've experienced it so much for so many years that I think it's still recent enough. And I also think just like kind of staying on top of whatever people are talking about. I think 5 years down the road or something like that, like if I'm married with a baby, like I might need to pivot into talking more about relationships and marriage or something that my content can grow up with me. But it's not something I feel like too far removed from.
Gotcha.
In that sense.
Yeah. Cool. I'm trying to think what else.
Well, I didn't know. I was gonna let you.
Oh yeah. So I guess speaking about like talking and all that, we're all very busy, especially as you get older, like with your career and trying to run something on the side and grow that to possibly be a full-time career or whatever. How do you feel like about dating apps? Because there's such a like negative stigma from dating apps. And I feel like it also depends on the app because I've talked about this with some of my friends. Like we had on one of their podcasts probably a couple months ago. And I was just kind of talking about the differences of the dating apps. Like you have like Bumble, Tinder, Hinge, and you have like Raya, which is like super like exclusive and stuff. So I guess like what's your stance on those 4 companies? And like, are they like different in ways?
Oh goodness. I think they're a necessary evil. Like you can't deny that people have met their spouses on all of those apps. So it's hard to say like, oh, like they're so terrible when it has worked for some people. I think I've had a friend meet somebody on every single app except Raya. Apparently no one really talks to each other there. It's just like an app for people that
people say
think
it's
they're
like
too cool.
a networking app.
Yeah, the whole thing is just getting on it, and then nobody does anything once they're on it, apparently. But yeah, I mean, I know someone who's met someone on every single app, so it's hard to say like, oh, they're bad. But I do think they're kind of a necessary evil, is what I would call them, I guess, in a sense that. Yeah, they've brought a way to meet people you wouldn't have otherwise gotten to meet. Like back in the day, you would have the street you lived on, your high school, your college, and you would meet people that way, and there was a limited amount of people, and that's really who you had to choose from. Dating apps really broadens your horizon. The challenge with that is it makes you more disposable, or makes people more disposable. If you're dating, in an area where you have no dating apps, you have no technology, you don't even have Instagram, 20-something years ago, and you're dating the person that lives a street over from you, you can't really ghost that person too easily. And you also don't really have a lot of options beyond that person.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's introduced some really cool new things in a sense where you've got a way more diverse mix of prospect, but also people are more disposable. People are wondering what else is out there. So I think they've introduced new solutions and new problems at the same time.
Yeah, because I kind of feel like if in today's world, if you aren't on them, it's just kind of hard to find somebody. Because I also feel like it's getting, since we have the phones and whatnot, it's getting harder to go up to talk to people. Rather back in the day, we didn't have the dating apps, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have Instagram, Snapchat, all that. So you had to go talk to them.
Yeah.
Now it's just like, obviously everybody is a lot tougher behind a phone. Not saying they're being tougher to dating app, but like it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
For one, you're probably in your own environment, and then 2 is just you don't have to see the person like in front of you and talk to them.
Oh, for sure. Like it's no one wants to be rejected. It feels a lot better when you can just tell yourself they haven't seen me yet. And you don't have to see their rejection. They're single. You don't have to worry about someone like sucker punching you in the face because you tapped their girlfriend on the shoulder. Yeah. So I think it's also made people a little bit lazier in that sense. Like, why go up to that person when you've got a million people at your fingertips, like a big stack of digital baseball cards of attractive people that you can just swipe through. Like, why bother? And even though people are even saying like, oh, why doesn't anyone approach anybody anymore? People, it's still it's scary. I mean, even for like confident people, like approaching someone's scary.
Yeah. And just like the stigma too with it. Cause I know like most of the time I tell my friends that are single, I'm like, you're probably gonna meet someone at like the gym, or like the grocery store. Like it's so like spontaneous. It's not really, especially at our age, like everyone is like, doing stuff on social media. Like Instagram is like a social media, but like that's like a dating app. Like people are always following people, DMing, whatever, and like meeting on there. So, I guess like going from there and like getting into that dating space and dude, I'm like drawing a blank.
I don't know why. Well, one thing I was curious to think what is your podcast like? What are they about?
Yeah, so the podcast, we just finished our 6th episode today. And really the angle I'd like to take it is people would send a lot of dating questions in that had a lot of nuance. I think I have ADHD. I think it's attracted an audience of, overthinkers. I would say it to you, like a lot of my audience, a lot of people that maybe are late bloomers or have had like challenges in dating where, maybe they're in their late 20s and, they want to get out there. They want to do it honestly. They're trying to avoid the, hot take dating, polarizing dating content. So they've wrote in these questions that were just like people have written essays basically. So the idea was basically let's answer these in a longer format or find a way to do it. So what I've kind of done, and I had a few episodes where I like dabbled with different formats, but the idea is basically 2 of those big long mailbag questions. If there is a current event or something like that, lead in with whatever this current dating news is, or it's like a quick hitter question. So something like, is this a red flag? Or like, is half your age plus 7 the appropriate age gap? Like silly questions like that. I think today's was because we had a boudoir photographer on, and it was, is it ever okay to edit your dating app profile pictures? Was one of our quick hitter questions. So something like that. And I'll usually make sure it leads into like the next question. So the 2 big questions that we spend more time on, it usually lasts for about an hour. And then of course, the guest, usually it's somebody that has, a career or an interest that's dating related or dating adjacent. So today's was like a boudoir photographer, and it was talking about, how to make yourself feel your best, feel sexier, what kind of pictures are okay to take as well. Just talking about like best poses, stuff like that. We had a fitness instructor on at one point. It was like, oh yeah, like is there how to do hot girl or hot guy summer in a healthy way? Like, so stuff like that.
That was I think I listened to that one.
Justine, she's great.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and it can be a mixed bag too. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, let's bring this person on and just see what happens. I think anyone can answer dating questions. We always make it known, like none of us are professionals, but let's dig into the mailbag basically.
Yeah. Do you think it's with, how do I word this? Do you think that's easy to do without hurting people's feelings?
I really tried. I try not to. And I think sometimes on like my TikTok content, I'm a little goofier. And I really like to make sure that I'm laughing with people, not at them, or I make myself the joke. Because I think dating is a sensitive topic. People don't write into random strangers' podcasts if the issue isn't really bothering them.
Yeah.
So I try to make sure that we're sensitive. I always talk to whether if it's my sister posting with me and my guests, like, hey, we always take the side of the email, or even if they maybe are a little out of touch or something, or they are kind of looking at things through a narrow lens. We don't want to not take their side. We want to be thoughtful. So I really, try to go that route.
How has that been for you? Because it's like you just started content creation like a year ago. And then fast forward a whole year later, you have random people from who knows where just writing new questions to help them on like dating. So how has that been for you?
It's interesting. Sometimes it's like, why would you trust me? But I'm honored for it. And a lot of times, like the questions, they probably have asked their friends, and their friends are biased, and maybe they don't want necessarily the therapy words. Like sometimes it's like you have people that are close to you that have a stake in the story, and then it's helpful to ask a therapist. And I believe in therapy. You should go to therapy and ask your therapist, but sometimes it feels good to maybe not have the therapy speak, or like the honesty from someone that feels like a cousin or something like that, or like someone a bit more removed. So it's been interesting for sure.
It's always easier to like hear what you need to hear from somebody else rather than someone you know.
Exactly.
Because it's like, all right, we played sports. It was easier for me to like hear my coach tell me this one thing, and my dad literally tell me the same thing. But since it's my dad, like I wasn't like, you don't know dad, or like, oh, I'm not gonna listen to you, dad. But since my coach, like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna listen to you. It sounds right.
Yeah, and you're coming from a completely like neutral side, like really have like no stake in the game. You're just kind of like seeing like whatever the question is presented to you, and you're just like addressing it how you would handle it, or however you think it should be handled. So
totally. And I think one big trend I would notice is that nobody's alone. Like I think, and maybe, I don't know if that is refreshing to hear, where it's like, your problem's not special. A lot of people are going through that. Or if it's reassuring, where it's like, you know, hey, like you're not alone. You are not crazy. I think that's a huge thing that I think people, the general gist of a lot of people's questions is just, am I the crazy one? Or like, am I out of line? Am I weird for wanting, is it weird that I want this? Am I allowed to want this? Like a lot of questions like that, questioning themselves. And then of course, communication, like people being scared to say how they feel because they're scared they're going to lose somebody. Like, oh, I'm scared to say I want a relationship because I'm scared I'm going to scare him off or something like that. So a lot of like fears, a lot of just nobody communicating or not really knowing how, because it's scary. Like a lot of that.
Yeah. Dating in general, like in your youth is, especially like this age, like I would say like probably like fresh out of college up until like, I would say 30, 35, like up in there, because you have so many different walks of life. Like you have friends that are married, have kids, friends that are single, doing what they want to do. You have friends that are like just focused on their career. And then you kind of like compare, like you might see your friend get married, have a house, start a family. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm single. I can't find anybody. And it's just like majority of like the youth is kind of doing the same thing. So it's, and especially with social media, like I really think social media has like hurt dating in a lot of ways due to the fact of how people just compare. Like even getting on like a TikTok or like Instagram, like you could be happy in your relationship, enjoying your relationship, but then you get on there and like you just see like stuff that you like, temptation, like all these like negative things that can like derail your brain, especially when you're young. You're like, oh, I'm not doing that, or oh, I should be going on this vacation, or oh, why does my partner not do this, and this for me? You know, so it's like, how do you feel about all that? Yeah,
I mean, it is the most. It's like keeping up with the Joneses like tenfold. Like back in the day, it was just like, oh, your coworker bought a new car. Like I gotta get my new car, and or like my neighbor got the new TV. I've got to now. Now it's like some random person on the other side of the country, and you don't even know if they actually bought it. You don't know if they're renting it. A lot of times, like people that are doing that, it's the highlight reel. Like it's, you know, oh, they rented something cool, or the setting they were at wasn't as great as it looked. And so there's all of this comparison, and you have also just a window into people's lives that you would not have otherwise had a window into. And it can be kind of, I guess, I don't know how to put it, like discouraging. Like back in the day, you would go to people's houses that generally were living a pretty similar lifestyle to you. Maybe you'd see some people with a house slightly nicer than yours. But you go on Instagram, you see like the children of like basketball players, you see like the NFL wives and stuff, and it's just like, damn, like I'm not enough, like stuff like that. It's even crazy too with like relationships and the expectations it set. Like you'll see like NFL or like wives and girlfriends, like recent proposal from their athlete boyfriend or something like that. And you'll go to the comment section, and someone's always in there like with 1,000 likes on the comment saying like, oh, well, if he wanted to, he would. It's like, no, like the average guy isn't a professional basketball player making that kind of money. And I think it just creates some unrealistic expectations in general.
Yeah, that's the hard part about like social media is, I mean, same thing where your parents live. Everybody just tries to like live up to the next person next to them.
Yeah, it's like keeping up with like you said, keeping up with the Joneses. And even like some of my friends that are girls, it's like you'll see like, oh, like I gotta, you know, I'm looking for this type of guy, like a high value, like man, like I need a guy that's gonna like, you know, make a bunch of money, like take care of me and stuff. And it's like, what's wrong with, you know, there could be a super good guy. He might not have the resources that person, you know, has. And then it also like makes the male perspective like super like alpha, like, oh, I gotta make like all this money. I gotta like have this image, because if I don't, then like the girl I want to be with is looking at these people that I'm not in that same category. And it's just like, then you have like the alpha man might be like, you know, shitty to these girls. And you have like the girls like, oh, like you're not good enough. Like, oh, my expectations are this, and this, because it's what I see online. So it's insane, honestly.
It's crazy. And I can't stand those podcasts. And like so many times too, it's like the people that like run those, and there's male ones, there's female ones. They all are trying to sell you a course of sorts. They're always trying to, you know, profit off people's frustration. People that maybe are struggling with dating, they'll go and create a podcast and get people from, you know, the craziest types of personalities that are going to say things that are going to, you know, kick you while you're down, so they can say, oh, like, oh, look how bad this person is, or you know, all of the people that are in your dating pool are going to be just like that. They think like this, even though they're not saying it aloud. It's like, no, this influencer type who wanted a lot of viewers and who decided to come on this show, who gets paid to be a crazy personality, is going to be a lot different than your desk partner at work.
Yeah.
Two very different people. And I think it's really toxic. And a lot of those people, they profit off the views. They profit off of like the super chats and stuff. So it really, like, if you're someone that's, especially if you're more introverted, you struggle socially already, just like kind of teaching like really like negative social skills or social perceptions is like frustrating to see. And then you see the female ones where it's like, oh, like you needed, I don't know if it's like the sprinkle thing where it's like, oh, like he's got to do everything for you and like he's got to pay for everything, like, and then they keep saying it's either you got a provider or a 50-50. It's like, why is it this one or the other crazy thing?
Yeah.
It's like the world doesn't look like that. Like I hang out with like plenty of people that are married or in serious relationships and whatnot, and nobody's relationships look like that.
Yeah, everything's joint,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's like being the team aspect of the relationship is so important because I mean, when you go on a date with someone, there is people that are like, oh, I'll pay for everything. But it's like, that's not realistic. Like you have to still supplement yourself when you get married and then start a family. Like you are raising your family together. Obviously there might be someone that might be the breadwinner and there's like, other responsibilities that take over in either role. But it brought up an interesting point because I've talked about it with a couple of my friends. It's like, when should the girl like either pay for the date or like help like go Dutch basically with the date? And I always told them, I was like, if you're gonna ask like for the first time, like you ask a girl on a date, you should pay no matter what, because you asked her on a date, like you're the one that approached her, whatever, like take her out, and then from there you continue to have more dates. If she likes you, you don't even need to ask. Like she might be like, oh, I got it. Or even on the first day, if y'all do multiple things, you might get like the dinner or something, but if y'all go get drinks after, she might be like, oh, I'm getting the drinks if she likes you. So I always tell them, like, when is that like feasible? But then you also have certain, like some people are like, oh, well, I expect this, and this because the dates they've been on or the people they've been with have just like taken care of everything. So I feel like that makes dating really, really hard for people.
Yeah, and people have definitely just made the conversations just so extreme too, where it's like, who should pay for I think who should pay for the first date is an entirely different conversation than the paying like throughout the duration of a relationship and those dynamics. I think there is, I think there's still like chivalry is not dead, where it's like women like the pay for the first date. But I also think like this idea of like the first date has to be this elaborate dinner date or something like that. Like this, like make him take you out to dinner. If he wants drinks or coffee, he's not serious. It's like, whoa, wait a second. You want to fall in love with a person, not a restaurant. Like let's take the frills out of it. And then I think kind of as you go on like those like second, third date, fourth date, whatnot, like I think things start to like level out. I'm trying to think of like what I did when I first got into a relationship. Like I think it was actually like we were at like Salt Lake or something. And he went inside to get the food. And the beer like truck was outside, and because I was out there like with the dog, I was like, here, I'll just go grab the beers. So it was
That's cool.
It wasn't like, oh, he didn't pay for the drinks. Like that would have made the date move like kind of disjointed anyway, and it wasn't a problem for me. And I think like just things start to level out, and it's also like you kind of want to do something nice for a person who's treated you if you like them. It's like, oh, cool, like to extend. I've always had when I was like on dates, like to extend the date, I would be like, oh, like let's, get a nightcap or like, let's go grab some ice cream or something. It was my way of extending the date. But I never went all out for the first dates. I didn't expect to be, I don't know what the word is, princess treatment or whatever. And I would like to think most people don't want that. I think there's the crazies speak the loudest, and they all have TikTok accounts.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people just say that, don't actually like think that or want that. Because for regardless of who it is, a boy or a girl, I feel like at the end of the day, as long as the person you're talking to makes you happy and treats you good, you're gonna like them, no matter how much money they make. If they don't make the money that you wanted, or whatever the case is, because you're with that person for that person, not because of what they're doing or whatever the case is. So I feel like a lot of those they just talk.
Yeah,
That's what I feel like.
Yeah, and I do think when push comes to shove, like a lot of people who say they want all of these things, like. It goes out the window, like when you meet the right person or when it's in practice. Like what you say a few drinks deep with your friends in close quarters and, because you, as a reaction to something weird you saw on the internet is entirely different than what you actually do in your dating life, I would say.
Yeah. And the first date, like the cliche, like just getting dinner and stuff, like that's cool because like you're getting to know them, but like y'all are both eating, like you're not really like engaged in conversation. Like I've always told my friends, like, hey, whenever you go on that first date, like try to make sure you do something like some kind of activity. Like I don't know, like I remember y'all talked about axe throwing. That was funny, like the axe throwing date. But just doing something like that, like where y'all are having to do something or a task and you can still talk. I feel like those are really fun to do the first time because it kind of breaks the ice a little bit. You can see some awkward moments with each other and, kind of go from there. And even too, like even like a simple, like get a drink or get a coffee or anything like that. I think those are good because you want to like know the person first too. Like you don't want to like go all out, like spend all this money or like, and some girls might like that. Some guys might like that. But at the same time, I don't know. It's just, I feel like too, when you're dating, you kind of got to like play the game a little bit. Like you can't just like go all out. Like you got to like show some cards here, save some cards for later and stuff like that. You
also, the other thing is you also have to spend within your means. Like you can't just like go out and waste $300 on the first date and be like, oh, okay. Yes. And then that doesn't even go anywhere after that.
Yeah. And like stuff's expensive. And I think like, I would like to think most people like are real, like the people that are like walking around are like walking this earth are more realistic than the people on TikTok. But no, like I think a lot of people realize, especially with like all these like layoffs going on in tech, like we're in kind of a financial crisis. A lot of these like snooty, high value concepts are really, really toxic. I think, especially for people like coming out of college, trying to find a job, and it's like, holy crap, I am not enough. So I think it adds up quickly. I think but that's where you can get really creative. Like some of the best dates can be, looking at where the best happy hour deal is or looking at like free events in your city. Like you could say like, oh, come to Blues on the Green or something like that. Free event, bring a picnic blanket, like stuff like that. I think people appreciate creativity and time and thought more than like a dollar amount.
That's way more important because, anything that's creative thought, it's like, oh, this is like a thoughtful, like intentional date. Like this person like wants to get to know me, but they also want to do something fun that's like different, as opposed to like, oh, like let's go on a date. Okay, I'll pick a nice restaurant. Like very simple, like I feel like that is a little simple too.
Especially coming from a guy, because I feel like y'all don't really expect us to like think of activities to do or just have some thought behind whatever we're doing.
I honestly think that is I think when people say there's guys that don't make a plan or like why won't they make a plan? It's a guy that's not that excited. When a guy's excited, he makes a plan. I think so. Sometimes there's like guy maybe doesn't always think of like women's perspective in a sense. Like there's a lot of guys where they think a hiking first date would be cute, for example. And not realizing it, it's nothing personal. Like, women go into dates being afraid of getting murdered. Like sketchy. Because, and it's not, never take it personally. It's not your fault. It's Ted Bundy's fault. Just blame Ted Bundy. So like that kind of thing maybe, but when a guy's like really excited about someone, they make the effort. They go on, the internet, like look up like a, where, when, what, Austin or something like that. Oh, what's going on? So whenever it's like, oh, why don't they make a plan? It's like, oh, he doesn't really like you.
Yeah.
I used to not do with my current girlfriend, but I was always just too nervous and scared because I always felt like whatever I was doing wasn't like enough. That was my problem. It was I was like, oh man, she's not gonna like that. Oh, that wouldn't be cool. When in reality, they just want to be with you. Yeah, they don't care.
They want to be with you. They
care enough that you put in that effort to do that.
Yeah, like when people also just think it's so sweet when people like listen to them. If you say if they say in passing like, oh my gosh, like I would really love to go to like this concert. I really want to see this movie, and then that Friday it's like, oh hey, we're gonna go see the movie you talked about. It's like, oh wow, like thank you for listening. That was really sweet. So it's like the little things, and there's so much too where it's like being a gentleman and like chivalry and whatnot that is totally free. Like opening someone's door for them is free. Like it doesn't cost anything to do that. It doesn't cost anything to say like, oh, like if they mention their mom, like, oh, what's your mom's name or what's your sister's name, and then remembering it and using that person's name in a conversation. Like none of that costs any money. And I think that's what a lot of times people are talking about when they're like, oh, like, I would love to, date a guy who's a gentleman. It's not like, oh, he drives a nice car.
Yeah. Question for you. He hates this one. How do you feel about people going into relationships and basing it off of their, basing it off their sign?
Oh God.
Thank you. So stupid.
No.
to me.
Oh my gosh, I never got into astrology. It's so funny because my sister tells me, she's like, that's such a Taurus thing to say. It's a stubborn one, which I am stubborn. But I just think like, why would you like? It's people are people. Like people are diverse. Like I would never make a major life decision or really any decision of any kind based on what's going on in the sky. Like. No, I don't like the love languages. I never liked like the Myers-Briggs and stuff. I don't like anything that just like puts people into these like arbitrary boxes. Because I think, and I put it in like some of my TikTok videos and stuff. A lot of what I do is like, let's put this on a spectrum. It's not boxes. It's, for example, someone says they're interested in dating someone casually. What does that mean? To some people, it's, you go on a bunch of dates and you do kind of like something that feels like a relationship, but you don't call it a relationship. And then on the other end of the spectrum, it's a person who wants a one-night stand, maybe. They both call it, they both say they want something casual. On Tinder or whatever. And then they get together. Okay, cool. Like I want casual. And then the expectations.
More to it.
There's way more to it. Well, you got one person saying, that's not what I wanted. I feel disrespected. The other person says, whoa, you're a stage 5 clinger. Well, I wanted casual. I said I wanted casual. So that's where I never like those like boxes, like anything that involves putting people into boxes like love languages, astrology, because I think feelings are more nuanced than that.
The love languages part, because I feel like that's been more in our history than the astrology, but like, or I guess... Used. Is that something you grew out of, or were you always like that?
I never liked it. No. So I never liked it because, and there's a few reasons. I think people use it as a way, as a crutch or a way to make an excuse for, not trying, not broadening their horizons, just stuff where it's like, well, someone wanted a specific birthday gift and their partner says, oh, well, gift giving isn't my love language. It's this. And it's kind of like, no, we kind of have to adapt in some ways. It becomes a crutch. And then of course, I think people misuse them to like their advantage. I think sometimes the physical touch is a synonym for, I would like to, go home with you and do that and be sexual versus like a back rub or something like that. So, I mean, there's always a joke of like on a guy's dating app profile for the what's my love language prompt. It's like, they all say physical touch. Or it's stuff like, oh yeah, like, my love language isn't active service. So no, like I'm not going to help you clean up your backyard. Like, so I think it just gets used as a crutch. I also think, who it was really designed for, I think it was like a Christian pastor who wrote it for very young couples, who were just recently married. If you think young Christian couples getting married, 21, 22, not a lot of relationship experience. And it was just at the basic level, how to communicate, because maybe they didn't have that type of, experience dating. So it was like, oh, here, like how to talk about your needs, how to, understand that people show love differently. And it was just easier for them to put it into like a few different boxes.
Yeah. Because relationships are nothing but communication at the end of the day. No matter what you're feeling, like you're gonna have to communicate. If you don't, then it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
So I just thought of a question. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but basically, like, we have friends, I'm sure all of us have friends where they've met like one person or maybe two people, the second person, and like they've been with them forever. And you have friends that have dated a lot of people, and then they're kind of maybe settling down, they're finding like who their person is. Do you think if you like basically a high school sweetheart, like that's who you meet, that's who you believe is your person, and that's all you date, do you think like that person, those people like don't really know what they like?
I think there are some people where that is just the way the chips fall in their life. Like they meet their person young, and sometimes that just happens for people. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think people that meet very young, they grow together. It's almost like they have a shared brain in a way. Like sometimes I wonder, because 30, not married yet, where it's like, I've gone so long like owning my own like house and like living in it by myself, where it's like, oh my gosh, like letting a new person in, will I ever be as close as like my grandparents were in that way? Like, is there room to like share when you've like had so much of your life that you've done independently so far? So I think it's like, it can go either way. I think if the friend that met their significant other in high school, their high school sweethearts, jumps in to give dating advice to their 29-year-old friend who can't figure out the dating apps, I don't think that's the most helpful person for that person to go to for advice. But I don't think that those people missed out on any. If you find your person, a lot of times they've done that experience together in a way, versus doing it solo and finding someone later.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like whenever you find the person, whenever it is, like, if the relationship never gets stale and they keep making you happy,
And the lack of fighting, like if you never fight.
Yeah, then what's the reason on if you enjoy being with this person and you love this person? I don't think there's like a reason why, like, you should go and find somebody else.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me because it's like I feel like you just mature so much in different levels. Like I definitely do think, like there's that time where. Because I know I have friends that have, dated someone for a long time, and then they like just randomly become single in their 20s, and they're like, oh, well, I've never been single. Like, and when most people are single, like 18, young college days, whatever, and then like they get in relationships. But then you have those friends that like dated someone long term, and then they become single when more people are starting to settle down. So it's like
that happens. And I think that's where it can get crazy. Because it's like if you meet someone in high school, like I think there's sort of that fear of like people saying like, oh, should I have, had time to be single and like walking away from a good relationship. I would never tell anybody to do that. But if you are in a relationship and it's not who you want to be with forever, and even though you've been with them for a long time, going from 16, met somebody in high school and then you're 27 or something like that. It just wasn't who you wanted to be with. They were good for you in that stage of life you were in. Yeah, it's a challenge for sure. It's not even just like dating again. It's like the dating apps, all of like the modern technology, like going into dates and just thinking like, like dating, like I feel like people like that too. It's like they date as though people will be like a significant other. They have to have like those like hiccups and bumps that people maybe had when they were a bit younger, where it's like, oh, like not ready for a relationship right now is actually a euphemism for I don't want a relationship with you. And then, maybe they stick around and say, oh, they said not right now. Like, maybe 3 months from now. So it's like they might be making that mistake a bit older.
Yeah, no, because that is a big thing. Like, I feel like if people like each other, they like each other, right? Obviously, there's variables, take your time and stuff like that. But I forgot what pod I was listening to, but somebody was like, if they're not doing that, like if they're saying this, or beating around the bush, they just don't like you. So it's like kind of a interesting dynamic. Yeah.
I feel like the high school sweetheart is kind of fading away. Because
of the internet.
Because of the internet. It just really started with like, I feel like our generation, maybe the generation right under us. A lot of people just don't. One, they don't get married. I feel like marriage isn't like a big thing anymore. And then two, like being in long relationships, I feel like isn't like a big thing anymore.
Yeah.
People just stay single forever.
Yeah, people just stay single forever. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if people are just scared of, nowadays they're just scared of just commitment and just have like just commitment problems, and that can go on to other things in their life, or they just don't want to be in it.
Yeah.
I also feel like the time of age we're in, a lot of people tend to follow like whatever their friends or whoever they're being around are doing. So if like they're hopping around, they're gonna hop around.
All your friends are single. It's like
I'm gonna be single.
Yeah. I think people definitely like to grow up with their friends because people talk a lot for like women about like your biological clock. I think there's also a social clock. Like people want to grow up with their friends, and that's something I think about too. Like I want to be able to call my best friend and say, my child, had this issue at school or something. What did you do with your child who's a year apart from my child or something like that? And so I think it's wanting to have that community that you grew up with. I think I have that. And then it's like as people's parents are getting older, there's a bigger age gap. It's like, I want my parents to know my kids. So I think there's sort of those feelings too of like that social calendar, wanting to grow up with your friends. And then of course, like, you're spending time around your friends. It's like, it kind of puts ideas in people's head that, a relationship would be kind of nice. Like as the nights out become barbecues and, just chilling by somebody's pool instead of, going, I don't know, wherever, like a Buford's or something like that. I think it just people kind of like grow out of it, and then all of a sudden one day it's like, this is sort of the direction I want to go. But I think until then, it's like there's so much uncertainty. Like if you think of like how like, you know, older Gen Z and millennials' lives have been for the last few years, there's been so much uncertainty. Like it was like COVID hits, and then it's you know, there's all these like layoffs, like economic crisis, all this craziness. And it always just feels like the other shoe's gonna drop. Like anything could happen. There's all this uncertainty. So it's like this idea of like being in a relationship. It's like, oh my gosh, like that's tying yourself to someone. That's another bit of responsibility. Am I ready for that? I think a lot of people are asking that question versus saying like, oh, screw it. You know, I feel stable enough to go into a relationship. Like if you think of a 25-year-old in the 90s who was making $100K or something like that, like living in New York, he had it made. He was, you know, ready. He would, you know, I've got the foundation to, you know, be in a relationship. You know, what are my obstacles? A 25-year-old making that much money now, first off, probably wouldn't be. It's hard to find a job right now. I think just as a whole, even if they did, it's like where like paying rent is a lot more than ever right now. You know, being able to, you know, go out, live your lives, like, is another COVID gonna hit? Like, I don't feel like I'm enough. Oh no, I looked on my phone and this kid my own age has a Lamborghini. I don't have a Lamborghini. I've got to get my Lamborghini.
They have a high rise downtown.
Exactly.
Like,
You're comparing yourself to other people. It's always like, you know, what's next? Not feeling like you're enough. So people, I think, are just scared in general. It's like, I've got to like lay the foundation, be this best version of me first before, you know, going that step.
The other thing too is relationships are just a lot of work, like you said. Like like you have to give time and day to the relationship for it to work. And as you get older, you do get busier, and you also do get, I guess, more tired. So like people go to work, come home like, oh, I just want to rest. It's like, oh, some people are, I don't want to tend to this other person or have this obligation to do that. So some people don't even want to do that.
And like on the weekends, a lot of people are like catching up on like stuff they couldn't do during the week, and you know. It's hard to get up and like, oh, I got to get ready for this date, you know, or go straight after work. Because I remember you saying like if you're after like Thursday dates, like normally dressed, you can just go straight from there to the date. And even too with like social media, like this is because like our generation basically started like Instagram, Twitter, like all that stuff. So like this is gonna be the first time. Because obviously, like you have like older family members that are on those apps, but they're not using it like we are. So we're gonna really see a shift from like people like clubbing all the time, going out, going on these crazy vacations with like all these people, whatever. And it is gonna shift. Like you're gonna start seeing people just posting like the family life. Like how does it shift? You know, it's very interesting to see because we're living it in real time. Like no one knows like what it's gonna really look like.
Yeah, it's very interesting for sure, and I think it's caused a lot of like modern dating dilemmas and discussions because of all of the new technology. Like, you know, back in the day, you could just say like, oh, like, you know, what happens if this person doesn't want to go on another date with me? Now it's like you go to your mom and say like, they asked for my Snapchat and not my phone number, and they go like, the chat snap? Like, what is that? So it's like, we're asking all these questions to each other because people, you know, 10 years older than us have no idea what the heck we're talking about. So I think it's introduced a lot of just discussion as a whole.
Snapchat's like the new phone number.
Well, that's what I was going to get to, because like some of my friends, they'd be like, oh, like they like talk to a girl and be like, oh, what's your Snapchat? And I was like, bro, like don't ask for that. Like they're going to think immediately like you're like just trying to talk to them through Snapchat, or like you're just like a kid, you know? But there is times, like one time, like a couple years ago, me and my friend Josh, we were like on Rainy Street, and like these two girls came up to us. We were talking to them. And then Josh at the end was like, you know, we talked to him for like an hour. And Josh at the end, he was like, oh, like, you know, what's your number? Like the conversation was good. Like, where could it go? You know? And she was like, oh, I don't get my number out. But it's like, you know, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel? Because then I was like,
found the Snapchat thing is like the most mixed bag ever. Because I got like a mailbag question on it, and someone's like, it's all the men that want the Snapchat. It's like, I've honestly found like the interest in Snapchat varies so much and it's, you know, obviously I think it skews younger, generally speaking, but I think older people have picked up on it, especially like, you know, people that are divorced, they have kids and whatnot. They're dating as a single parent, where it's like they're more scared to give out their phone number because of their address and safety. So if they learn about Snapchat, they're kind of using it. But beyond that, like there's some people where it's like there's the phone number thing. There are some people that are using it for weird reasons, but I think it's one of those where, you know, there's a wide mix of reasons why someone might prefer Snapchat, or it's just what pops in their head and they haven't really thought about it at all. Like some people are just phone number people.
Some people give out their Instagram a lot. I feel like that's like like if they're not gonna give out their number, because I told them, I was like, I was like, just ask them for their Instagram, like, and then you can just follow them and talk to them on there. And then if it, like y'all have a conversation from there, then maybe ask for the number then, you know? But yeah, I mean, that issue comes up a lot because it's like girls don't give out their number. It's like, oh, I don't give out my number.
Then it's the double. Okay, cool. Next time you go to the next person,
You know?
Oh, can I get your Snapchat? Like, oh, Snapchat.
Like, how'd I
Are you a
talk
little
to
kid?
you, you know?
Like, it's everyone's different, and I think everyone's like, yeah, doing their best to just. No one wants to, like, that's the thing is, like, no one wants to be the a-hole or anything.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's trying their best and they're doing the best they can based on their lived experiences and how they interpreted them. You can't read anybody's mind. So that's, I think, another big thing, like, a lot of daters should remember. Like, everyone's always like, this person, you know, sought out to be evil to me, or like, when they ghosted me, they, you know, looked down at my name in their phone and they said, I've got to get away from this person and sneak off into the night, never talk to them again. A lot of times, like, a ghosting just sort of happens because they forget to text you back, or they didn't think it was all that big of a deal, and then all of a sudden 3 days have gone by. Like, they didn't
and they just
intend to
weren't
be evil.
interested, or the convo was kind of dry, and it's just like, oh well,
Exactly.
If this isn't going to go anywhere, like, why drag it out? Like,
Exactly.
let's just end it now, you know?
Exactly. So it's like people always jump to the conclusion of like, oh my God, the person sitting across from me is evil. They're an F-boy, they're a gold digger. And it's really just a lot more people trying to get by with a lot of things going on. Like, your phone brings a whole like other world into, you know, everything in front of you. Yeah.
Cool.
Do you feel like social media kind of plays a negative role into dating? Because you have the girls are on TikTok and saying, I want a man who has this, and then they always say, oh, man ain't shit, and all this and that, and like what? And then
funny.
yeah,
keep talking about that, guys. For that.
But it just, do you think any of that like plays a negative role into like the
Absolutely.
dating now?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like, I think there's like having the window into the window into lives of you know, wives and girlfriends of athletes is not healthy, especially where it's like you see the proposal video and then someone's commenting, oh, if he wanted to, he would. It's like, okay, cool, yeah, if he had $120 million contract, maybe he would. Yeah, no, we're working as a you know, an analyst somewhere. So I think it's like it creates that unrealistic expectation. I think it also, like, if you thought back, like, think to like back in the day, I forget what shows I wanted to watch when I was like a 13-year-old kid that my mom would like turn off and say like no MTV, like no watching Laguna Beach, where Kristen Cavallari was standing on tables and yelling at people, like, but it's like that times 10 because it's like in their hand. It's not like, oh, you've got your TV and you come home and can watch it for an hour and then you go to bed, the TV's not even in your room. So I think it's really drilled into people's head. And I think also people have a lot more access to maybe things that they wouldn't have sought out on their own, like a TikTok For You page or an Instagram Explore page or something. It puts content in front of people that, you know, they don't really know how it got in front of them. Like, I think people, you know, more would hear about shows and whatnot from their friends. Now it's like, you know, any sort of crazy can kind of be on your phone and seem credible and legitimate versus like, oh, like it's, you know, a TV show that has a lot of people and accountability behind it. So I think, yeah, in general, like kind of influencer culture, not necessarily just like social media. I would say influencer culture definitely too.
And the bad thing too is like everything's a cycle. So like you have like the men ain't shit crowd, the girls ain't shit crowd, but it's like you attract those people. Like if it's a reoccurring thing every single time, like yes, these people could be bad people, but at the same time, like you're attracting these type of people for a reason. Like you have to kind of like, at least I think, look inward and like, okay, why am I attracting that person? And then from there, because it does cause a cycle, because like a girl or a guy that's like, oh, like the opposite gender is like, you know, not treating me right, then they like go on their own, like, well, fuck them, I'm gonna do my own type of like spiral thing. And then it becomes a cycle, because you could affect someone that's like a really good dude or a really good girl, and then they could be like, oh, well, this person's shitty, and then they do it, and then it like they affect someone else, and it's like a circle. So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
That too. And I think there's some of these like influencer types are saying all this stuff for entertainment and views. I don't think they're even actually doing it. Like, so this stuff like, oh, haha, like I went out and, you know, used this, like stole a guy's wallet or something like that. Or, you know, I made him pay for all this money, or I brought my friend along and he was just too stunned to speak and paid for both of our dinner. Like, how many of those people are actually doing it versus telling a story to get views, and they have no shame because they're making their money off of Instagram. And then, you know, the 15, 16-year-old girl who sees all the likes and the views and thinks that influencer is really cool, thinks that's okay to do. So I think, yeah, like it definitely, you know, can prey on like a demographic of people that are, you know, easily influenced, especially people that maybe don't have good support systems at home. You know, they don't have, you know, mom looking over their shoulder, or, you know, a brother or sister who cares saying like, you know, what are you watching? What did they say to do? Like, don't do that. And so I think definitely hits, demographic of people that, don't necessarily have support, like that type of content.
All right, so now we're gonna do like a little fun segment. We have some questions from the audience and a little mailbag segment, and if we think of other stuff while we discuss these, we'll talk about it. But kind of run down this list. So one of the questions we have are, what are some of the red flags that you see people ignore the most? And I guess that's for all of us.
Ooh, red flags people ignore the most. I think something people do, and I wonder if this is like specifically red flag. I think when people are when they feel confused, they should feel turned off. So if someone's doing something that confuses you, where it's like, why is he not responding to my text or something like that? Or why has she like blown me off for 3 dates in a row or something like that? Like, why?
Yeah.
I'm so confused. I think turning that on its head and thinking, I'm not attracted to a person who's not excited to be here. Like, I'm not interested in, continuing a relationship with somebody who's, not as excited to be here as I am. So I think, anyone who's making you feel confused, that would be the red flag. But I would say to turn it on its head and feel turned off, so that you don't, waste your headspace on it. But yeah, anytime someone's making you feel confused,
Like read the room kind of deal. Like, yeah. What about you?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm still thinking.
I'm trying to think. I would say, I don't know, man, because I just get annoyed like quick. It's like stuff annoys me, but it's not like I'm like, oh, that's a red flag. I would just say maybe in like the dating scene, and like you see like a girl that's like always out. It's like you're obviously like out for a reason. Like even if we're like talking and stuff, and you're like, oh, I got to go out and do this, or like a girl that always like that like always travels, and they're like, they're with somebody. But like they don't post them, but like they're always with like that type of stuff. I'm like, that's a little, but then they're single though. It's
yeah,
that's like a red flag.
I've always found the travel to be such a mixed bag. Like I feel like there are some people who are, it's like they gravitate toward travel people. I never liked travel people because it was like then they could never be around for a date. Like some people were like, oh, like when I would see people on Hinge with like a bunch of travel pictures, I was almost like, I don't know about this, because I would rather, do something with somebody who's, not going to go out of town for 2 weeks or something like that. I've always found like it was difficult to, start anything with them in general. So I saw it from like that perspective. Yeah. Or it's like if they're still kind of in that like, oh, I've got to see the world phase versus like, oh, I'm ready to meet somebody. Like I sometimes would see it that way too.
Cool.
I don't know. I can't think of one.
To it. Yeah. Do you think distance is a cop out for not continuing or entering a relationship?
Distance? Ooh, that's a good one. I think I feel like cop out's a weird way to describe it, because I will say like logistics matter. I think some people, they think like if you met the most perfect person in the world and then you learn that they were moving to Japan tomorrow, that you would, brave like the tundra to go get there on foot and find them. I do think logistics count for something. Like there's also like you do have a life to live, and as much as you want to be with another person or compromise, at some point you do have to like look out for yourself. I think distance without a plan is but I think in general that might be it isn't the match in general versus like the distance. Like I think if you have distance, there's got to be like a what's the game plan here? Are we going to be distance forever? Like are we waiting on someone to finish school? Is it a work assignment? Teacher that's finishing the year in June, nurse. Something like that. What's the plan? Having whether it's like a timeline in your head too, where it's like if this continues to go well, like one of us, we're gonna have to make a decision together on what's next for us. So I think distance has got to have a plan. I would say, and people have to be on the same page.
I would say yes and no. Kind of just depends on like how far. Obviously, if it's within the means, like here to Dallas, here to Houston, like if you're saying no because like it's a distance, or San Antonio, like no because a long distance, then it's a cop out. Yeah. But if it's like somewhere there to Japan and
across the country.
Across the country, like I mean, if you can make it work, go ahead, do it. Yeah. But it also has to be a means in your financially and just in your lifestyle.
And just like the trust aspect, because like you're so far from each other, like it's so easy to just get away with whatever. Like the person literally doesn't know. And I would say, you just, like you said, there has to be like a set plan. Like you have to, like if you meet someone and y'all decide to date, and it's like, okay, are we going to see each other every 2 months? Are you coming to me every time? I'm coming to you every time. Are we alternating? Like, what does that look like? And then long term, like a year, if this like goes past a year or 2 years or whatever the time frame is, like who's moving? Because like at the end of the day, like someone's going to have to move.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
it's like at that point, you've either been with the person for a while or that person's, you're pretty much think they're the one if you're going to do that at that point. Because no one's just going to willingly just do long distance.
Spend all that money.
And spend all that money going back and forth when you have a whole ocean of people right there.
Yeah. Okay. Is it fair to follow a timeline in the dating relationship field?
I think... And I think people will always say like, oh, like there's no like, oh, like, you know, follow your, there's no timeline. You know, it can vary and like there's no right way to do things. I think there is no specific right way to do things. But I do think there's a timeline that you are allowed to have for yourself, and you're allowed to walk away from someone who's not on the same timeline that you're on. I think some people are scared to have this timeline because they think they're making it seem too rigid, or they're afraid to seem crazy. They're afraid to seem like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna like find myself dragging a person down the aisle. But I think it's absolutely okay to have timelines. I think, like I said, logistics also matter. Biology matters. There are some people where they want to have a family by a certain age. They want to have, you know, a certain amount of kids. They've got everything all lined up. And if you're bringing a child into the world, the logistics matter. You want your kid to be born into a life that's healthy and safe. And it's something I feel like I see a lot, just at 30 years old with friends who are, you know, 30 single and dating, you know, those situations where they're, you know, they don't have time to just, you know, like, oh, what's going to happen here? And so those first dates, they're a lot more direct. Or, you know, if a guy's kind of like waffling of like, and like, oh yeah, like, you know, maybe we'll do something. It's like the guy cancels a date. It's like, hey, you know, like it was great to meet you, but you know, I don't know that I can move forward with this. I think I'm dating at a different pace than you're at. And, you know, they walk into the dates and say that pretty upfront. And then, you know, maybe a guy who's the same age isn't on that same timeline they are, which they don't necessarily have to be. And that's okay. And that's the other thing too, is like sometimes people will like make people feel bad or shame them for not being on the same timeline. You are entitled to your own timeline, or no timeline if you don't think about that yet.
And it is tough because like women become more at risk the older they're getting to have kids and stuff. And, you know, single women in their 30s, like might want to start a family and, you know, have a kid with someone, but that also speeds it up because it's like the guy doesn't have to worry about that. But like the female, she's like, okay, well, I meet this guy. I want to have a family. I want to start a family. Like, how do we get there, you know, before it gets, you know, too late, you know? So it is like an interesting thing. I think with timelines, I really don't think like, oh, like 6 month mark, or we can't travel till we've been together for, you know, 6 months, a year. Like, I think none of that stuff really matters. I think it's more so in like the, you know, engagement, marriage timeline. Like there's people that have met for like a month and then they get engaged, and it's like that. And people are like, that can never be me. But then that person could have just been like, you know what? I met this person. It's who I want to be with. We both have everything else taken care of, like our own personal goals, growth financially, and we can go from there. Also do think too, like a lot of people, when they decide to get engaged or get married, they might just now start having the conversations with that person of like, how many kids do you want? Like, you know, because I don't think you need to be like married or engaged to have those conversations, especially if you're serious with the person. But I think you need to talk about that. You need to talk about like financial stuff, like, because at the end of the day, unless you sound like a prenup and stuff, you're like going to be financially obligated. Like you need to kind of know, like, maybe what this person could have a ton of debt and I don't even know. And then I'm about to like propose, and then I was like, oh shit, now we got this. Now I have this problem that I didn't ask for, you know? So I think all that stuff is really important. And, you know, obviously that's why they have like premarital counseling and stuff like that. But I mean, that's at least my thoughts on that.
I think timelines are fair. I mean, you, like how you said about some women, just as they get older and whatnot, and then even for men too, they want to have family and kids by this age because they want to be able to do all these things while they're still young and
the social calendar too. Like I've seen, I've seen a lot too, where it's like, a guy has like a brother who's 2 years older, and it's like once one domino falls, the other one does. Like all of a sudden, the brother that never was in a relationship all of a sudden is, and then his marriage is like a year after his brother's or something like that, and then they raise the kids together. Yep. Or it's like they want to do the grandparent thing, make sure their parents are involved in their kids' lives. So I think sometimes people paint it as though like your women are approaching 30 and oh my gosh, like they're panicking and all the guys just aren't even thinking about that and never will, and oh no, the women missed their chance. And it's kind of like it's not that extreme. I think the guys, like, they get there eventually, but it's not, they're not waiting until they're 40 and marrying a 20-year-old. Yeah. I think of all of my friends, I have the biggest age gap between myself and my boyfriend. We're 7 years apart. Most of my friends, it's 2 or 3 years apart. So like this idea of like the 40-year-olds marrying the 20-year-olds, I think that's really just happening in the entertainment industry. But like, yeah, like I think you do see the guys say like, oh, I'm ready, but it's never a panic. And I think sometimes like, women, everyone's still got the crazy aunt that's like, oh, you're still single, like, like better, like everyone has that aunt. And like, I don't think men have that the way women do. Like men usually get asked like, how's work? So I think like women, they have the, the biology, and of course you open TikTok and you've got someone telling you that your eggs are going to dry up and that the guys your own age want the 22-year-olds. And it's like, it's not what I see in the wild. And also like, sometimes the information they get about biology is a little bit wrong in the sense that they're like, oh yeah, like once you're 30, you're done. It's like, it's not that soon. Yeah. Yeah, like I think women sometimes panic because of all the noise out there, for sure.
I also feel like timelines are a thing that should be discussed once you kind of already know where you want with this person. Like if you do know that you want to be serious with them, then I think a timeline like should be discussed before you even get deeper into the relationship.
Honestly, like I feel like those like timeline type topics like can be weaved into first dates really easily if you know what you want. Like maybe I say that as someone who's older and got into my relationship at like 29. But yeah, first date conversations, like I think, and it's never like, shoehorned in there like I'm hoping to have kids by this date, but stuff where it's like, oh yeah, like when I have kids, I would love to take them on when I have a family, I would love to go to this place as a vacation, like stuff like that, where it's like a lot more like show not tell, or you talk about your family more, you talk about where are you hoping to take your job, and these aren't weaved in as like this like strategic checklist conversation, but you find a way to weave them in naturally, and you listen, you show not tell, like I said. So I think it makes sense to have that timeline and share it, communicate it quickly, I think.
Yeah. What are some like unspoken dating rules?
Ooh. I want to avoid like all of the like cliche. If we wanted to, we would, or if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. I do think anytime someone gives you language about something not happening right now, or like, oh, I don't think I'm ready for this right now, ignore it. I do think people, when they say I'm not ready for a relationship right now, I don't want anything serious right now, a lot of times they really believe it when they say it. But I think it does mean like you don't sit there and wait for them. So any temporary sounding language, just end the sentence early. If you get that. I'm trying to think of like other unspoken rules. I think for guys, I would say like just the women's fear of being murdered. Because women love true crime. They're always listening to true crime podcasts. It is nothing personal. We know you're being nice when you offer a ride to the first date. They will probably say no. Because there's that fear in the back of their mind. So I think the unspoken rule is, even just things like I've heard you guys tell stories where it's like the girl goes to the bathroom on the first date and he thinks he's doing something sweet by saying, oh, I'll get her a glass of wine and it'll be ready for her when she gets back. And she comes and she says like, hey, like, not like this is the sweetest thing I've ever seen. Nothing personal, but like
that's understandable.
Like, so it's like stuff like that. So I think just that kind of unspoken rule where it's like, we know you're coming from a good place, but just I think those like first, like that before they get to know you, like those little like optic type things, or like the hike first date, like all that.
Yeah. What about you?
Oh, I don't know. Again, I don't know.
I'm trying to think. I'd guess saying like, I feel like a lot of people, and I don't know if this is like an unspoken rule or not, but I think a lot of people don't like kind of go into that Jonah Hill thing. Like the boundaries, like I think I think boundaries should be respected on all fronts, but I really don't like the unrealistic expectations where it's like, these are my boundaries no matter what, which is fine. But And like, that's that. I do think in a relationship, you have to open that up and change things, because you're basically like a relationship, you're together, like you're forming like this together like bond, like path you're going on. And I feel like if you're not doing that, it's selfish to that person, because, and vice versa. Like, I think both people have to like change their boundaries in ways, obviously like not too extreme, but if there's something like, okay, that's a little like ridiculous to be honest, and like unfair to that person, then I need to like adjust. And I think that's okay. But I also do think people make it's like, oh, like, no, if he doesn't respect your boundaries, leave him. And it's like, come on, like.
And I think, unfortunately, like, because I think like boundaries are such a healthy thing to have, and it's always been like I feel like gaslighting became like weaponized, like almost like a year ago, and someone has taken boundaries has started to be weaponized in a way, where boundaries, it's in the right sense, it's something you say for yourself. I think boundaries just in general are said in I terms, like. It's said in the form of like, I'm not comfortable with X, and you can say it like as far as your partner's actions, like I'm not comfortable having a partner who, goes on pseudo dates with female friends or something like that, like one-on-one date like activities that I'm not included at, that are kind of hush hush, and lo and behold, she's her ex. I'm not really comfortable dating someone who has those friendships. And I think when it's worded that way, it's not personal, it's not an attack at the other person. It's said in I terms, and I think sometimes people will give an order or a demand and then like end the sentence by saying, these are my boundaries. It's like, that's not how it works. Like if you tell a person, you're not allowed, like you can't leave the house and you can't hang out with, and then a bunch of like maybe negative language toward you, can't hang out with bad wild friends that are disrespectful or something like that, and these are my boundaries. It's kind of like that's seems like an attack or an order, and it also seems directed at them because it's in you terms. Like if you say like, hey, like I'm not comfortable dating somebody who has is a bikini model, that's said in more of like a boundary sense. And then of course people don't have to, like, people can walk away from your boundaries, and I think that's part of it too. Like the Jonah Hill situation, he did say you can like walk away. I think kind of like how he framed it, I think was more demandy than boundary. Yeah. I don't think I would go as far as to say like, diagnosing him with mental disorders like narcissism or abuse or anything like that. Yeah. But it was kind of an unhealthy way to communicate what he was looking for.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess just learning to meet in the middle. That's something that's like not really talked about, but you have to do in a relationship. Learning to meet in the middle.
There's a give and take with all of it. Is it okay for like, and I guess this can kind of go into the other one I wrote down, but is it okay for guys to like other girls' pictures while they're in a relationship? And I guess it just kind of depends on the picture. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
A like exists on a spectrum. I think one thing that people will do a lot of times, especially with social media, is there's always this like way of making somebody seem crazy for having a concern about social media. Because then they make you the person that's like, oh, you care so much about social media. You care so much about a like. You care, like, anytime there's some sort of issue there, like, oh, like, wow, you care so much about, they did a heart eye emoji, like it's not a big deal. They make you seem like the crazy one. I think likes are a currency. And I think they do have meaning to them. And I think they send a certain type of message. But yeah, I think like the picture matters, and then like the relationship to the person, I think matters. Like, bikini pictures are very different than someone, at a family reunion with their grandma. And then I think there's also like, I don't know, like there's, people, what the relationship is to that person. Like if you're still following your ex and you're liking their pictures, like, that's a little weird. If it's, the person that grew up in the house next door to you and you're the same age, your moms are best friends, like it's, like almost an unspoken rule that you're always going to like each other's pictures because you grew up together, but it was never something weird.
So like, I guess, for example, what about like high school friends, college friends, like of the opposite gender, like y'all are cool, but like y'all, like, is it okay to like their stuff, even if it's like I don't even know how to explain it. Like even if they're like what's the word? Like associate, I guess.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to think.
Your actual friend, but y'all know each other.
Yeah. I think it's one of those where it's like if your partner or significant other doesn't like it, like, do you need to give that like? I think it's like a big, it doesn't matter unless it matters to somebody. Because I think like sometimes when I'm scrolling down, I'll just like the pictures of people I know. But I also don't stay in touch with exes or anyone that I maybe knew had had a romantic interest in me. I'm big like keep those people out of like my follower list in general if there's a romantic history. So, but like I think there's sometimes it's just you go down the list and not think anything of it. But if I had a significant other say like, hey, it bugs me, especially just because you see the username there. Like, like I've had women who will say to you like I don't know if it's like there's like the puppy. The first picture is a puppy, and then the next picture is like it's like this Instagram account where the first picture in the carousel is just a puppy, and then it's like a really attractive woman. And I forget what it's called, like puppy melons or something. And like women know that their significant others follow it, and they're like, when you like the puppy melons picture, it says your name right there, and it's kind of embarrassing. It says your handle there, and people like screenshot it and send it to me. So it's like even little things like that, where it's like, can you at least like look at this in private, or do you have to follow this account or something? It just makes me look silly, and people ask what's going on in the relationship.
No, that's fair. Definitely.
I just feel like it just kind of depends on the relation and what the picture is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like you said, family reunion, people are gonna like it, say 50. But if it's a picture of you in a bikini, a picture don't get some likes.
Yeah.
It just all kind of just depends on what is
and
going
like,
on, and
if you know them or
because
I think like the selfie or like just like a normal picture, I feel like that's okay. But I definitely think there's like a limit if like it's like. And this goes into thirst traps because, at least like I don't know how you feel about it, but like from your perspective, say like you're in a relationship, you're posting like all these thirst traps like consistently, like and like it's okay, like your boyfriend or whoever's boyfriend might be like, oh yeah, that's fine, like I don't care, like I know like what our relationship is, like that's no big deal. But to like some people like, oh, that's like almost disrespectful. It's like over together now you're still like showing yourself off, but it's like I feel like it just depends, like if you're on vacation or whatever. And then same thing for you, like how do y'all feel about like that, like thirst traps? I feel like that's just a thirst trap.
Yeah,
at that point it's just however you and your significant other have had that conversation. If they say it's okay, then it's okay. And if they don't like it, then don't do it.
Yeah. I think what is a thirst trap? It's one of those like it when you see it, because I think there's even swimsuit pictures that are clear that don't feel like thirst traps. Yeah. It's like it feels sporty. It feels like they're doing an activity.
You're just on a boat, like just chilling. Like,
yeah, you're with your friends or something like. And then there's ones where it's like that's a thirst trap, or it's a fully clothed one where they're doing a certain look. It's like that's a thirst trap, and you know it when you see it. And I think it depends. Like I think there are people where they have some sort of incentive to be a presence on social media and have attractive pictures out there. And I think that's something people could have to consider when they enter a relationship with somebody. Is this something that bothers you? And I think you can change your mind. You can realize something doesn't bother you until it's in front of you and you realize how it goes. But I think, it really depends. And I think that's also why maybe people in those types of industries date each other, because they get it. Like you see actors date other actors, stuff like that.
Yeah. Even influencers, like, I mean, there's a certain kind of like, when you have like a certain kind of fame, like not to date like the same people, because that can get like conflicting and weird in its own way. But I definitely think it is different, because you could have like, 100K on Instagram, you have a following, everything you do is analyzed, even like your relationship, like keeping that private in a way, because it's like, well, I'm like this big figure. I don't want like my fans or whatever, or like the people that follow me, like super diagnosing like my relationship, or like antagonizing her or him. And like, it just is just different, because I mean, you could have like 1 million followers, and then your girlfriend could have like 1,000 followers, and it's like, how do you like, it's different,
Exactly.
Because you have like such a microscope on you.
Exactly. And I think that's where it's like, it's not for everybody. Like, like I know there's people where, and I think you see it like on TikTok, where it's like the people that do chronicles of their dating life and stuff, like the girl who goes on like, oh, here's my recap of the date, and they'll like nickname the guy like, oh, like the date with the professor, and then they come on a day later, oh, the professor dumped me because I was talking about him on the internet. Like, it's not a life for everyone. Like there was that, like, I don't know if you remember, there was like a West Elm Caleb was the name of the story, where it was guy who had a lot of matches on Bumble, who was just being talked about a lot because he was matching with people, sending them like cut and pasting messages, and then all the girls realized they were all going on dates with this guy who said he wanted to date them forever, and turns out he didn't. But guys are definitely like afraid of that, and sometimes people are just like they don't want to be a prop in social media. They don't want that kind of attention. So it's like kind of a song and dance with that too, and people are totally in their right to not be comfortable with it. Like I've seen that too. Like one of my good TikTok collaborator friends who's in the Washington DC area, there's a lot of people that are dating and that have like private security clearances. Dating has been tough for him, where people see the influencer TikTok thing, they're like, I have a security clearance, I can't even go near that. Yeah,
that's great. Last thing, I guess, for me, the goals for you from the back last of the year for yourself and for your podcast that you do.
Yeah, I would love to continue to grow my content on all platforms. I think it would be really cool to be able to grow in a sense. Like, I think it would be so cool to get picked up by, I don't know if like a Barstool is too ambitious, or like a Almost Friday kind of thing where it would have like a big network. I feel like sometimes it's like you have to make the choice between being creative with content and making business decisions. And I usually am good at making the business decisions, but I feel like with this, it's almost like the content's like too much of my baby, where I almost like want to have that support. So I think something like that, being able to take things to the next level, I think beyond that in general, have good, healthy relationships, enjoy my time in Austin. And then of course, keep it separate from my internet personality, have, the healthy personal life first, because that's, I think, what really matters to me. Yeah.
I guess, do you have anything for us?
What about you guys? How can I help? How can I take today's conversation and share it with my audience?
Go ahead. Yeah. Basically, so we'll have this edited, we'll make clips, and then we'll just do like collab posts with you. Also, yeah, I mean, if you have like any people in your network and vice versa, like I know you obviously have your own podcast, and if we have anybody we can send your way for episodes, just let us know. Always down to help that out, and vice versa. If you have anybody that you think is interesting for us to interview, or even just doing more of these, like I'm always down to collab. And I think this is like a little this is different for us. Normally we just kind of interview people and like that's it, but like having a collaborative discussion, because we have like a podcast called The Round Table. We have like basically everyone within our media company, and we talk about like current events, like what's going on. And we have like little fun segments and stuff like that. But maybe like, I guess like in the future, especially like once we get a spot and all that, maybe like trying to like plan like maybe every other month or something where we could do like collab stuff and just like get more like of a girl audience involved and like do some different types of stuff. I think that'd be super cool, especially you have the experience, like you're very good on camera, like you know what you're doing. And then I think that'd be something cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
We've been trying to like, essentially like we're trying to like build a media company in a way. So it's like, it's nice to like have like different stuff like that.
Oh, totally. And I would love that. And I would be honored to have both of you on my podcast.
We've
got a full mailbag that I would love to have both of your help answering. And then of course we can tackle like relevant dating topics that you could think you can speak to the best. I think I have a 60-40 female male audience, which is really nice.
That's really nice. Yeah.
It's really nice. And it's all people that are fed up with influencer stuff, whether it's the Alpha Bros in Miami or the New York City, LA girls. It's people that are just like, oh my gosh, like let's just have some like nuanced takes and also just be able to laugh at ourselves, have fun with it. Yeah. So we have fun, and we'd be honored to have both of you.
Yeah. And it's a guy's point of view.
Exactly. It's great to have that too.
Yeah. But thank you again coming on, taking time out your day. We appreciate it. We'll have all of her information in the description down below. Make sure to go check her out. But this will do it for another episode of Opinionated Off Topic, and we'll catch y'all guys next time. Peace.
Peace.